Harry Spiro, who is one of our survivors, which is something absolutely amazing, and it's a very, very big privilege for you to be able to listen first straight away from a survivor about his story. Harry.
My name is Harry Spiro. I was born in Poland in a town called Piotrków Trybunalski. Before the war, the town had about 55,000 inhabitants. Out of the 55,000, there were about 15,000 Jews in the town. I was with my sister. I had a younger sister, 2 years younger than me. With my father and my mother, we lived in a home. Just before the war, the town, what I remember, was quite a nice, happy town. At least my youth was quite happy. There was always talks in 1939 that there is going to be a war inevitably to break out soon. I was under 10 years of age. It didn't mean much to me. However, in 1939, the Germans invaded Poland. It took them only 2-3 weeks. The only things what I can remember, that it was a very hot day. German tanks came into town. They opened their hatches, asked the people for drinks, which they were supplied. It was very hot. A couple of days later, I saw in the town a lot of German soldiers walking in the streets. Many of them went into shops, which the majority of the shops were Jewish shops. They went into the shops, bought cigarettes, chocolates. And to me, it didn't make a great impact. And this went on for about a few weeks, about 6 to 8 weeks. I didn't see much change. However, after 6 weeks, the Germans made an announcement. Any Jewish youngsters who's got to stop going to school, because it was always state schools, no Jews to go to schools. Well, personally, it didn't matter to me. I didn't enjoy school so much. I wasn't a scholar. A few weeks later, they made another announcement. Every Jew has got to wear a white armband with a yellow star in it, written down Jew, from the age of 6. Otherwise you will be found guilty and be shot. So everyone had to wear a yellow star. Somehow you took notice, you had to do it. As a youngster, I couldn't understand why do a regime do this. This went on for a few weeks. Then they made another announcement. They designated a few streets, saying all the Jews got to live in that vicinity. They put up some notice. Beyond that notice, if you pass, you will be shot. That was the first ghetto that the Germans established in the whole of Poland, the first one. Well, we didn't know what is going to happen, why they were doing it. A lot of people were talking why, but you couldn't find an answer. A few weeks later, They rounded up about 21 of doctors, lawyers, people from the Jewish society, people who were in charge of the society. They round them up and shot them. That really brought a lot of scares in the community. We didn't know why they're doing it or what is the object. It was a lot of talks. Eventually, we couldn't do nothing about it. However, food started being shortage. People were hungry. People were starving of hunger. If you had money, you could buy on the black market, you could buy some food. In the meantime, my mother, my sister, father, including myself, we were hungry and could see a lot of people in the street, starving, dying, no medication. On top of it, I noticed it became more important about it, that you had a lot of communities, a lot of families all of a sudden appeared in the vicinity of the ghetto. And there were more and more, and a lot of the people who didn't live in the town, the German uprooted them from the villages or smaller towns, and they actually put them all into the ghetto. It became so overcrowded that people died far more than you ever thought about it. And we realized why, because they didn't have where to live. They started living in the streets and dying. And this affected my family, including myself. I noticed where some people were selling food in the streets, and I got to know where they got it. And the basic thing was some of the families, the youngsters, they smuggled themselves out from the ghetto and brought it in and sold it. We didn't have money. We were poor. We didn't have money to buy food on the black market. I got to know where they smuggled themselves out, and I decided to do the same thing. The first time that I went out from the ghetto, I was really petrified. I didn't know. I knew where to go to the village, to a farm, but on the way I was really worried and petrified. I felt very, very lonely, very bad about it. However, I overcome the loneliness, the fright. I went into farmers, started talking to them, bought some goods, brought it back to the ghetto, and then my mother resold it or baked a few things, resold it, and that I felt we overcome the starvation. This went on for quite a long time, and the longer it went on, the more people were dying in the streets because the Germans uprooted a lot of Jews from outside the town, so much so that eventually, instead being 15,000 Jews in the ghetto, there were about 24,000 Jews. So you can imagine the amount of extra people being in smaller vicinities, and hence they were dying in the street. I somehow felt satisfied that myself and the family, at least we've overcome the starvation, from dying from starvation, what I was doing. However, the Germans actually got to know what a lot of us were doing. In the beginning, they caught you, they gave you a beating, threw away whatever you had with you. Eventually, they used their dogs, the Alsatians dogs. But it didn't stop us to go out and do what we were doing, what we had to do. Eventually, they started, once they saw what you'd done and they caught you or saw you, they started shooting you. And if they shot on a few occasions different boys. It was mostly boys. Once it got to that stage, my mother knew, of course, what I was doing. They've never, it's one thing, my family never, even up to this day, can't understand. They never asked me to do it. I always done it on my own free will. And so once they started shooting, my mother got to know about it, of course. She had a long talk to me and told me, stop doing what you're doing. It's too dangerous. Life is more important. I argued with her, what can we do? Because at least we're not starving. Nevertheless, she did convince me, and I promised her I will only go out once more and I won't go there, and I won't do it anymore. I went out again once more. I went into a farmer that I knew him from the times that I was buying from him. I somehow trusted him. And I told him I got a problem. And the problem is I can't come anymore. And what I want you to do is I want to buy a big sack, full sack of wheat, but you have to deliver it to me. And he had to deliver it through a street which it went through the ghetto. Would you do that for me? He said, yes, he will do it. He said, you got to pay me in advance, which I did. Once I went back to the ghetto, I thought to myself, what have I done? Here you got a man who's taking a calculated risk. He doesn't have to deliver it, and I paid him all the money. I was lucky enough that the man was a very honorable man. He delivered it. The time and the date we arranged. I had it sold already. I had a lot of money at that time. It was a lot of money to me. I took it home, I gave it to my mother, and I told her what I've done, and I will not do it anymore. She was happy. I was happy. We had quite a lot of money. However, as time, weeks and months go on, to buy on the black market, I could see the money is going to run out. I noticed there was a job going, there was a big glass factory in the town, and they took on workers. So I thought to myself, it will be a good idea if I go and apply for the job. When I went to apply for it, I went in, the secretary asked my name, where I live, and asked me what my age is. And when I told her, she said, sorry, I can't give you a job because you've got to be at least 12 years of age. We don't employ anyone under 12. And when I applied, I wasn't 12 years of age. I went home to the ghetto. On the way, I was really disappointed with myself, and a thought came into my mind, well, if I go back the following day, hopefully it won't be the same secretary, and I will give them the name and address, but I will give them a older year, 1 year older. Luck will have it, I went back, it wasn't the same girl, and she gave me a job. I was very happy. I went home and I started working in that factory, which it was a glass factory. I was happy. I felt happy that this will be again overcoming starvation for the family. This went on for quite a few months. In 1942, there was an announcement very early in the morning, no one to come out in the street, and the announcement was anyone who's working in that glass factory should come out from the street, from the houses, and meet up outside the synagogue. I heard what the announcement was. My mother said, well, get ready and go. And I said, no, I'm not. This time I'm not listening to you. And the argument I had with my mother was basically, she said, hopefully one of us to survive, which again meant nothing to me, nothing. I didn't know what she meant, what she was talking. And my argument was, who's going to look after the family? I've been doing it for the last few years. I'm not moving. Well, my mother wasn't a strong woman, but she actually physically, and I do mean physically, picked me up and threw me out from the house. We lived in a ground floor. And she said, hopefully one of us will survive. Again, it meant nothing. I really felt very, very disappointed, dejected, and I thought to myself, how could my mother do that to me? I always knew, even at that age, that I had a very, very close relationship with my mother, very close. And my mind was immediately full of tears and couldn't think straight. And the only thing I couldn't understand, how could my mother do this to me, the relationship that I had? She did, threw me out. I walked down outside the synagogue. We met up, the people who worked in the factory, and then they put us into a camp, which it was only 1,500 inmates, people. We went in, we stayed in the camp, we went to work, of course, every day. Within 3 days, we all got to know that the whole town has been evacuated and sent to Treblinka. I don't know whether some of you might have heard or knew what Treblinka was. I certainly didn't that time, but Treblinka was a gas chamber with a difference from other gas chambers, what you might have heard, like Auschwitz or other ones. Treblinka was a gas chamber that every unit that came with people, right and left, right you live, left you go to die. Everyone who came out from the tracks went straight into the gas chamber. So you had no survivors at all. We've heard about this. When they evacuated the town, a lot of parents, they knew that they're going through the factory on the railway. A lot of them threw out love letters to their people who worked in the factory, to their loved ones. My mother threw one out, basically saying, "We love you, and again, hopefully one of us will be alive." It didn't mean much to me. Worked very hard in the factory, kept on thinking what happened on the way when there were gas. Did my mother and my sister, did they console each other? Did they talk to each other? What did my father do? Asking questions and couldn't get no answer. But I accepted that they're gone to a place where they will never come back and I will never see them. While working in the smaller ghetto, the Germans knew that there should be only about 1,500 of us working in 2 different factories to be in the ghetto. And everyone, whoever who stayed in the ghetto had a permit that they can stay in the ghetto and a permit to get food. And I had one, of course. However, the Germans got to know that instead 1,500 people in the small camp, there were about over 2,000 Jews. The other 500 Jews, how they came into the camp was when the Germans evacuated the whole town, a lot of people hid themselves and then they came back to the camp. So the Germans got to get rid of the 500 people. They made an announcement that they know how many people are about, and if everyone will come out and give themselves up, they will be taken into the camp and get officials staying, get food. About 300 not actually came out from hiding, and as soon as they came out from hiding, the Germans immediately rounded them up and put them into the synagogue. So they were short of 200 not people. They gave a directive to the police to round up another 200 because all they were interested was numbers, to make up the numbers. When I left the shift, unfortunately a policeman picked me up, stopped me to round me up. And I begged with him, I showed him I got a passport, I can stay here, I'm not from hiding. He didn't want to know, he did pick me up. And the lucky thing was that it wasn't only me or another 2 or 3 or 5, but they picked up 21 of us from the same shift. And we went into the synagogue. The first day we didn't report for work. The production director asked the units, why is it they are not here? Because it was a big amount that didn't come in from a shift. And he was told where we are, and he will never see us. He then immediately phoned up the Gestapo. He was telling his problems. He needed us because he couldn't replace us. Well, a lot of us had very skillful jobs, and with luck, he got permission that the Gestapo actually called us out from the synagogue. And we were 21 of us. In front of me, there was a man who was a bit older than me, or much older than me, and he had a baby with him. And the Gestapo said, "No, you come out, the baby's got to go back to the synagogue." He was pleading with him, but he wouldn't have it. And within seconds, the man was in front of me, and I could see in his eyes that he was thinking, what am I going to do? Should I go back with my baby, or should I put the baby back and come out with us? He took a decision that he went back with the baby, and he went back. A day later, they were all taken out to the forest, and they were all shot. And there was a big monument, a big recognition what the Germans done to the 520 Jews from the synagogue. We still went back to worked for a few weeks. Then basically the Russians started advancing to Poland. The Germans could see it was too near the Russians advancing. They abandoned the place that we worked in Piotrków, and they sent us to another town, to an ammunition factory in Częstochowa. It's another town. There, for the first time, I saw different inmates under different conditions, very bad, worse than the one I was in for a long time. A lot of them worked in the ammunition factory, and a lot of came out yellow. And the reason was because they worked in the vicinities of chemical stuff, that they should have worn some protective uniforms. They didn't, and they actually were yellow. A lot of people died of hard work, starvation. Again, we weren't for too long there, and we were eventually sent, because the Russians moved on quicker to Poland. So the Germans closed up that factory, that camp, and they sent us to Buchenwald. Buchenwald was already a completely different thing, completely. It was huge. A lot of people were there. Once we arrived in Buchenwald, they said to all of us, strip, we shave you, you will go through a shower, and you come out on the other side, and we will give you clothes. Basically, a lot of us heard about going into showers and people were dying. So I thought, oh, this would be the last thing that I will see anything. However, we did come through the showers, they shaved us, they came out on the other side, they gave us a uniform, and we came out alive. Once we came out through the showers, this was one place where they took your name away. Up to now you were called by your name wherever you were. In Buchenwald they took your names away and they gave you a number. So you were a number, you weren't a name anymore. I had a number. There were things that personally what I felt about Buchenwald was we had to stand for attention to be called up, or what they called appel, to call up whether you're still alive or whether you're here. Many times in the winter, we stood still to be called out for 3-4 hours, and it was terrible, very bad. However, I was okay. After a few weeks being there, they picked up a group of about 25, 30 of us, and they sent us to Germany, to a concentration camp, and it was called Theresienstadt. There it was a very, very large factory, which it was bombed by the American and the English, and it was the worst one I've ever been into. There wasn't a day that you got up and you went to a washroom that you had dead bodies laying in the street, in the washroom. And most of the time you only thought about yourself to survive. And this is another way of surviving. That camp was really the worst one could ever be. After a few months, the American and the English, they advanced more so into Germany, and they decided, the Germans decided to evacuate us, put us on trains to go to, and took us to a destination. We didn't know where we were going to go. We were for a while on the train going, and the English who bombed the railway, and we couldn't go. Most of us ran off from the trains, ran into the villages to try and get some food. It didn't take long that the Germans actually rounded us and we started marching. When we left that camp, Reimsdorf, we were about 3,000 of us. Now you can imagine marching to a destination by foot. Very often overnight we stayed in farmhouses where they had facilities for 300-400 people. We stayed there overnight. In the morning, if you were lucky, sometimes we got a potato and a coffee or a hot drink. And very often they didn't have it and we didn't get nothing. So you got up and you started walking. You had a row of people walking. It's quite a long row. None of us had any strength. If you felt tired, which most of us did, you could sit down until you came to the end of the row. Once you came to the end of the row, you always had 2 to 3 SS men, and they actually told you, they never beat you, they never done anything, they just said, get up, walk, otherwise I'm going to shoot you. And that's exactly what they've done. Many times on that walking on that road, I sat down hoping to gain some strength. And when you came to the end of it and you would think yourself, well, should you take a chance? Maybe he will not shoot you for whatever reason it is. But when you hear the click and you see the fellow of the gun and you see the men dropping in on the floor, you somehow get up quite quick enough and you start walking. It was very bad. In life, you need a bit of luck. One of those we were walking, there were some planes above us. And once there were planes hovering, we all had to lay down on the floor, and it was not in the streets, it was only a farmhouse, fields. And I noticed a bee troop, and I made a dash for it, and I picked it up, and I put it behind my jacket. One of the boys noticed me doing this. He then came up to me and he said, "I know what you've done, I know what you got, give me a piece." And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, if you don't give me a piece, I will tell all the others what you got, and you know what will happen. They will all be on top of you, they will try and take it away, and you will find that you will be dead and you won't have nothing." Somehow it made sense to me. I gave it to him, and he came back the second time. I again gave it. Third time, under no circumstances, I never gave it. He survived, and I survived the Holocaust. Many years after survival, the same boy, he became my business partner for many years. He married a girl called Pauline. I married a girl called Pauline. So it's a very strange thing. But anyway, we survived. Unfortunately, he died about 10 years ago. Anyway, going on, we started walking. And eventually, once we arrived into Theresienstadt, Theresienstadt is basically a place in Czechoslovakia, which before the war there was a concentration camp. The Germans made a concentration camp out of it. The days must have been a day or two before we arrived. We arrived were about 270 people. The rest from the 3,000 were all shot or died of starvation. A day or two before we arrived to Czechoslovakia, I somehow, I don't know what happened to me, but I know I fainted, I passed out, and within a couple of days later, I found myself in a hospital in Theresienstadt. A friend of mine came up in the hospital, said, Harry, we are liberated. Come on, let's go out and celebrate in the square downstairs. I said, come back in another day or two because I didn't feel strong enough. Eventually he came up and went down. We celebrated. And I remember the first day we went up to the gates from the Theresienstadt, and there were Russian soldiers who actually liberated us. And we told them we want to go out to the street, and they said, yes, by all means, go out. You will see a lot of Germans being captured, and you can do whatever you want for 24 hours. We both went out, we stopped a couple of soldiers. My aim was basically to take everything what he's got in his rucksack for edible things, which I took. He had chocolates, and I took. I nearly killed myself overeating, but my friend took the same thing, chocolate, and he saw the officer had a pouch, and he took the pouch as well. He actually begged with him, no, I'm a smoker, take anything you want, but not the pouch. And he tried to resist, and the Russian soldiers said, give it to him, which he gave it to him. When we went back to the camp, he tried to make a cigarette to smoke, and then he found there were diamonds in it. And he was so happy, and to us again, we were only under 15 years of age. It didn't mean much. He took the pouch, he put it behind the mattress that we lived in a room. We normally lived about 5, 6 in a room, and we only had a mattress as soon as we got liberated. We went out to celebrate. When we came back, he lost, well, somebody nicked his diamond, so he lost it. Being there in Theresienstadt for a few days, we got to know, the hearing was that if you want to go to England, I didn't know where England is, and you got to go into an office to report and register. And the only thing, the criteria was you had to be under 15, or at least 15. You had to be a survivor, and you had to be an orphan with no one else, which I did. We all signed up. That time there was an organization which it was called the World Jewish Relief. It's still in existence. They had a lot of discussions with the government, begging them to allow them to bring in about 1,000 boys and girls under those circumstances. However, it took them a long time, but they succeeded, and they got permission to bring over 1,000 boys and girls. We left Theresienstadt, we went to Prague, we then went on planes, and we went to Carlisle. From Carlisle, we went by bus to a place called Windermere, the Lake District. Some of you might have heard of it, which it was very, very good and very nice. For the first time, I had a bed to myself, a clean bed. People were looking after us. They had, the people who were looking after us, or who brought us over, had a very big problems to bring us back to what I call normality. Can you imagine, most of us were 10 years or under when the war broke out. Things that what we saw, what people do to each other, what they're capable and what they are doing to each other, never showing us a way what human beings should do. So we really lost a lot of guidance and learning, and we lost it. So they had their big job. We were very, to my mind, we were very vulnerable to any directions if they wanted to push us. They didn't. The organization decided, yes, they knew what we went through, they knew how difficult it was, they knew we didn't have any parents or anyone, and their job is basically to bring us back to normality. They sent down a lot of religious people, a lot of non-religious people, or non-political people, just to tell us basically life has got to go on. Yes, we know what you've lost, everything, but life is important and it should go on. Until we actually acclimatize ourselves to a new way of life or a proper way of life. Then they broke us up in groups of 20, 30, put us to hostels, then taught us the language, taught us a job. Then we went out, met girls, went to club. A good thing about what we did do in even those early stages, that we got together and we had we kept together very much as a group, and we had we started meeting every year. We had reunions. We met. We kept in touch. And a lot of us got married. Children. Over those years, I was one of very few that I didn't get married very often. Did I enjoy being in England and being with the boys and being with a group and going out and meeting people, meeting girls and boys and going dancing? Yes, I did. Did I feel happy? No, I didn't, and I don't know what it was. I knew there was something missing, very much so. And very often I kept on thinking to myself, is this what my mother meant? Hopefully one of us will be alive. Yes, I'm alive, but I didn't feel happy and jolly about it. Yes, I was happy that I was alive, but I knew there was something missing. Until I met a girl, a lovely girl. Her name is Pauline. She is here. And we got married. We had started having children. And it's only when we had children, normally in Jewish places, on a Friday night, when you have your supper and you light a candle, and you normally have your fathers and grandfathers for the children, or aunties, or my children or our children only had close relationship from my wife's side, because I haven't got anyone. I came by myself. And it's only was the first time that I remember when I actually saw my children on the floor, and on Friday, and I looked at it and I thought to myself, you know what, Mom, you are right. I'm glad what you've done. And Hitler, no, you're not right. You're not right. You didn't win. I won.
Thank you very much, Harry. Absolutely unbelievable story. Now, has anybody got any question?
We haven't got time for questions.
No question? Okay. Then I'll pass it on to Rob.
Okay.
Lista, please.
There's not really much I can add to the story you've heard. What I want to do now is invite you all to join me in a minute's silence. Before we do that, I'm going to ask Harry to light this candle. The idea being that a candle brings light where there's darkness, and we say that a human soul is very much like that. There are people in the world who try to bring darkness, but most people have a decent soul that can bring light where there is darkness. And as we contemplate this candle and think in that minute's silence, we can resolve ourselves to be the type to bring light rather than dark into the world. Thank you very much.